Hello and welcome to the video. This is an overview of this thing here. This is the updated version of the LAL5 that I looked at a while ago. This is the LAL 5.1. The big difference being is what they've done is they've actually increased the kV of the motors from 1850 on the original version, which was more really designed for 6S, to a 2600 kV set of motors on here, which is definitely more for a 4S pilot. So if you like the idea of the LAL5 but didn't want to invest in loads of 6S batteries, or you're more of a 4S flyer, then this might be more up your street. Now, as I unpack this, let me talk a couple of bits about the specs. The specs on this are almost identical to the original LAL5. The frame is the same, so it's a 225mm wheelbase, 5mm arm thickness, bottom plate, in fact everything else is pretty much 2mm, 2507 motors, very blingy. On this version with the LAL 5.1 name actually screen printed on them. Appears to have the same 50 amp 3 to 6S D-Shot 1200 capable 4-in-1 ESC in the middle. Flight controller is the Eachine customized LAL-F405 flight controller that also has Bluetooth on as well. And again, it has the Tarsia 4K V2 camera installed at the front, so you can also record everything as you're flying around in beautiful 4K. VTX transmitter is also inside here. It'll run up to 800 milliwatts. It's a TX805 from Eachine and has a little antenna at the back mounted in a flexible support. Now on the website, Eachine are touting this as an FPV racing drone, and I don't think this is. This isn't a racing drone at all. This is a jack of all trades, as I talked about with the original LAL5. It isn't light enough or agile enough to be a racing drone, and it's pretty heavy for freestyle as well, with all of those bits and pieces inside. But if you want a quadcopter that you can fly around and do flips and rolls and kind of play about with, as well as have everything ready to go out the box, then this will do that for you. Now, when I reviewed the LAL5, there were a couple of things that I wasn't a fan of. First of all, that they were using metal screws on the Tarsia PCB. I actually mounted mine on a plastic 3D printed base just to make sure there's no interference. They haven't changed that, but it does look like they have changed a few of the bits on the back here to mount the Tarsia PCB, which is good because you don't get the interference when you're flying. The camera cable is still very tight in here, so if you are trying to put the camera at a relatively low angle so that you can cruise around slowly and still have the horizon in the right place in the frame, then you're going to struggle with that with the layout of everything. The build quality on the original one wasn't fantastic, and unfortunately it looks like Eachine weren't really taking account of that. This one is slightly better, but again, in my opinion, things like having these taut wires for the motors shouldn't be this way. They should be made so that the wires have a little bit of slack and kind of come up the arm flat before rising up to be soldered onto the 4-in-1. That gives you a chance, if a solder joint does let go and you have to remake the end, of remaking the end. And also, if the arm takes any kind of knock, then that shock is going to be transferred right the way up the wires and potentially separate or crack the solder joints on the 4-in-1 board. The VTX antenna is still fully enclosed. If you're flying relatively close in, you won't have an issue with that, but check out my video on why that's not a great idea in the FPV Antenna Lab. And last time the tune in Betaflight was quite basic. Let me jump into Betaflight in a second and we'll have a quick look at what this one is like. So going into Betaflight, let's just see how everything's set. Accelerometer is nicely calibrated. We don't have a barometer or anything in here. The ports are set up like this, which we have a GPS setup. And again, I don't know why the Eachine don't clean things like this up. It doesn't have a GPS fitted. There's no point having a GPS set in here. Smart audio for the video transmitter, and UART5 is also turned on as well. In the configuration, set for D-Shot 1200, the max speed that the 4-in-1 ESC will support. 8K gyro update frequency, 2K PID frequency. There's this slight change in the first gyro, just be aware of that. Only 8K load on the CPU, so we could probably get away with the higher loop frequencies if we had to. Scrolling down to the bottom, air mode, OSD, anti-grav and dynamic filters turned on. I'm going to save RX lost because motors should work in that way to give us a chance of finding it, because there isn't a beeper on here by default. Power and battery look like that. Failsafe is set to drop. PID tuning. Okay, not a lot of fantastic stuff in here. Let me just scroll through everything. Again, Eachine are, in my humble opinion, not spending enough time in actually tuning these things so that they fly decently out the box. If you're going to have a ready to fly like this, get it in the hands of a pilot who knows what they're doing so they can actually put a decent tune on it to give you an idea of how it's all going to work. I'd be more interested in having that than CNC cut AK-47 gun keychains in the box. Had to go into the receiver and set that up. Looks like the RSSI is being output on auxiliary 12. Modes needed a little bit of work, and so did the on-screen display. If we jump into the CLI, just type version, we're running 4.0.3. Again, not the latest and greatest version. So let's go to the field. Let me show you what this thing is like in flight. So this is the image recorded onto the SD card from the Tarsier with the OSD in the top left hand corner. Now the OSD is nice and solid, so there's none of those kind of weird grounding issues with the Tarsier camera, which is really nice to see. I haven't had to do anything to make that work well. Now you'll notice there's a bit of breakup every time I'm kind of coming down the field towards myself, and that's because with my battery mounted on the top, it immediately obscures the low mounted aerial, and that antenna again is mounted inside a plastic cover, and that isn't ideal. Now the image coming from the Tarsier is very nice, it's recorded great, just chasing around these seagulls, but the flying itself is all right. It's actually flying okay. It has lots and lots of power to get in and out of trouble. It's reasonably smooth. It doesn't feel very locked in because the tune isn't super duper. But again, as you can see, every time I put the tail away from myself, I get a lot of static and breakup. So definitely mount your battery underneath. The RSSI, interestingly, in the top right hand corner of the on-screen display is also not working very well, despite kind of showing it right in the receiver tab. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what it's like. Surprise, surprise, the Tarsier is doing what a Tarsier does. There's a little bit of prop showing in here. I've put the Tarsier down a little bit flatter as I'm not flying really quickly, and you do get a little bit of the prop in both the FPV image and the Tarsier unless you have it tilted up about 20 degrees. So in summary, what do I think? Well, last time I meant Well, it's nice to see a calmer 4S version of this model. I think this will appeal to a wider audience than trying to sell it as a breakneck speed 4S version. The individual pieces in this are pretty good technology, and it is a nice frame. The VTX seems to work quite well. The flight controller is decent. The Tarsier isn't my favourite HD camera. I actually prefer the Runcam unit, but the Tarsier performs really well. There are a couple of things that they could have done better with. First of all is, again, it's that tune. They need, whenever they make one of these things, stick it in the hands of a pilot and get them to tune and play with it a little bit. This, again, is stuck between a number of worlds. It's the jack of all trades and the master of none. Is it a camera ship for filming? Is it a freestyle quad? Is it a racer? Really hard to tell. It kind of can be all of those things. Not really a racer. It's nowhere near light or agile enough or powerful enough now on 4S, but you certainly can have a lot of fun with it. The build quality, as I've said, is the same as the last one. All they really seem to have done on here is to change the specifications of the motors. But that leads me on to my last point, and for all of you that stick right to the very end of the videos, I have a little bit of a surprise, and that is I have two of these now. I have the 6S one, the original one that I had, the LAL5, and this LAL5.1. I do not need two of them. So I'm going to do a giveaway for the original 6S version that I reviewed a month or so ago. So if you're interested, like, comment and subscribe. In the comment, make sure that you say LAL5, LAL5, and I will search on those comments when I use the random comment picker in about a week's time. So hopefully that's for all of you that don't just come for the giveaways, that actually watch right to the very end. Again, links to everything in the description, and let's hope we get some better weather here in the UK to get out and do some more flying. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.